I continue to maintain that Jingle All the Way is a good movie. And sometimes it feels like no one in the world agrees with me. Jingle All the Way came up recently as one of the suggestions for movies to watch on Hulu. And I was in kind of like a family setting. And there was something about it that I just gravitated to. And I remember putting it on, and everybody became happy. And we sat there and we watched the whole 90 minutes of the film absorbed, which is so much more than you can say for most of the stuff that's posted on streaming services these days. So I started to kind of think about it. Why is this movie so good? And why is it so reviled? And it is good. Jingle All the Way isn't just entertaining for 90 minutes. It's actually consistently funny throughout. There's a lot of good physical comedy, like the scene with Arnold Schwarzenegger fighting with the Turbo Man cutout. There's a lot of references that are funny and not like reference humor today, where it's like too self aware. The movie is also obviously sometimes unintentionally funny, but there's like this beautiful kind of in between being intentional and unintentional, where a lot of the comedy seems to live.
Put that cookie down! Now!
Arnold knew this was a great quote, by the way, and he actually re recorded this recently. This is on Arnold Schwarzenegger's own YouTube channel. He posted this himself. So basically, it's a funny movie, but I think there's actually something else going on here. It's actually a movie with good characterization. Now, to call it great characterization is probably a little bit of a step too far, but there definitely is a character arc in this movie, and it's definitely worth looking into. So normally one character arc movies are actually a little bit dry because they don't have some sort of initial arc launching the character into the story. In this case, it's actually not so bad, though, because the plot pledge of getting the Turbo Man doll is so clear that it's kind of like pulling you through the whole film. And the movie is actually short. This is a 90-minute movie. So having just one big arc for the principal character actually makes sense. And it's pretty clear what the arc actually is about, which is it's about moving from a position of selfishness to a position of selflessness, right? So initially, Arnold Schwarzenegger is solipsistic, and he's just out there for himself. And he needs to move into a position where he's getting this Turbo Man doll, not just to achieve objectives for himself, but to actually like be able to integrate back into his family well. And there's actually a pretty bizarre and interesting creative decision that gets made in this movie, which is they basically decided to put Sinbad in this movie and have him really be the same character as Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? He's the same, he has the same objective, and he has that objective for the same reason, which is he's in a selfish position, he's looking out for himself. He's been like a disinterested dad, and now he needs to be the good dad. And what's interesting is that the selfishness of these two characters, the solipsism of these two characters, causes them to be driven into competition, even when they should be cooperating with one another. Because after all, they're a lot more likely to be able to get two Turbo Man dolls together than they are going to be able to get one for just one of them, with them trying to kind of edge each other out. And all of the tensions between the two characters come to a head in this one scene where they're together in a diner, and they have this kind of brief moment of alliance and friendship. And in the scene, Sinbad kind of talks about his relationship with his father and the way his father only put himself first, how that kind of damaged Sinbad moving forward. And in this scene, not only do these two characters connect, there's actually this great little moment from a side character, who's a guy who's running the diner, who, when he hears Sinbad's story, is just clearly overcome with emotion, and it's never explained, right? So something about what Sinbad said impacted that guy. It impacted his memories of his own relationship with his father, his own relationship with his son. Something happened that made that guy overcome with emotion. This is a good scene in a good movie. And it ties into the broader direction that the characters are going in with respect to their arcs. Now, obviously, Arnold and Sinbad can't fully make peace in this moment because the movie has to go on. And it needs to move to a conclusion which really solidifies this plot theme of moving from being selfish to being selfless. On the whole, this is a really fun movie with a kind of Christmassy message at the heart of it. And it kind of begs the question, why do people not like this movie? And I think there actually is some stuff here that kind of makes sense. One of the things that's really interesting is that because they chose to make the movie this short, because they chose to not give it that meaty Act 1, the Christmas themes aren't really pushed from the beginning of the movie, right? So, for example, in Christmas Vacation, Chevy Chase's character has the opportunity to solidify his Christmas bona fides. So this is a guy who likes Christmas, even if he's misguided. The Santa Claus, which interestingly is a very similar movie to this one, gives Tim Allen this whole Act 1 where he gradually becomes okay with the fact that he's Santa Claus now, which allows him to kind of turn in towards it and kind of embrace it. So you can see why this movie isn't kind of on the level with those. There's also this element that there's a kind of unfortunate mean-spiritedness kind of running through this at times. This connects actually to my least favorite scene in the movie. So I get that this kind of undermines the vibe that this is a Christmas movie, which actually connects to one of the weirdest elements of the way this movie gets marketed, which is with this image, which implies that Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to be Santa Claus. And it's like, no, that doesn't happen in this movie. Nothing like this happens. That's the Santa Claus, you know. But I guess if they put Arnold Schwarzenegger in a Turbo Man costume, like no one would know what that was, you know. I mean, I'd know. So I actually saw this movie in theaters in 1996 with my dad, who is divorced from my mom, on visitation. And let me tell you, that was a vibe. There's something running into the id of the father-son dynamic in this movie. And it's interesting because even though it would be easy to lump this movie together with other 1990s movies that are about like the absent father, the father who's trying to leave the situation, the truth is Jingle All the Way kind of doesn't deserve that, because Jingle All the Way is actually about a father who's trying to stay in the situation, who's trying to maintain the relationship even in the face of difficulties. And it's interesting because for this reason, Jingle All the Way is actually kind of better than a movie, for example, like The Santa Claus, which is a better movie in most respects, but where the message is more that the father is just going to leave more or less entirely, and that he's kind of transitioning out of the family, where the handling of that message seems more mature on the surface. But on another level, this message is kind of a paper-thin facade for a father who just wants to jettison his responsibilities, wants to jettison his relationships. And so I think it's actually kind of fitting that at the end of these two movies, it's spoiler alert, by the way, that in the Santa Claus we see characters getting gifts, but in Jingle All the Way we see a character giving a gift away, because it's about that message of moving from selfishness to selflessness, which is actually the message of Christmas. So if you're someone like me who for years has been saying, you know, I kind of like that movie, or you've been saying, I don't understand why people don't like that movie, you stand on better ground than you think you do, because this movie actually has a lot of components that work and make sense, even if there are also elements that are abrasive or have the wrong tone. So Jingle All the Way, worth checking out, a good movie with a good message, much maligned over the years, but unjustifiably so.
The Doberman dolls. They're all gone.
Mom, Dad, Booster.
Thank you, Turbo Man.
You can always count on me.